All right, Matthew, I want to continue on with that theme, talking about the betting exchanges from the previous part. Now, the fact that there's not enough prey for the sharks, arguably on the exchanges, does that mean now that they're getting less accurate and you've got a chance taking them on in the figures?
I think if I think about the people who have continued to grow the exchange business, because there's this idea that everyone is trading less, making less money on it at the sort of the top end, the professional end. I think the people who are willing to out and out be bookmakers essentially on the exchanges, the market makers, they have not experienced this same trend. There are quite a few of them who are doing as much now as they ever have done. And these are people who are putting up, on a football match, they're populating the win market, all the total goals lines, all the Asian handicaps, the correct score, everything. And they're doing that for every match, every day, live, pre-match, all the time. Those people who are doing that kind of market making, I think are still having a good time of it. And the thing is that because that business model has stood the test of time, has worked well, they can never get, like fighting for your edge, the people you've spoken to, they can never afford to drop the ball because it is a good pot to get hold of. If you can be the person that replaces one market maker by tooth and claw, Betfair is a perennial sort of gladiators arena. And, often 3, 4, 5, 10 may enter the arena, but it always gets whittled down to 1 or 2. So I think while at any given time there'll be only a couple of sharp opinions, really, really sharp opinions on the market making side, they must have been incredibly successful to hold off these potential new competitors. So I think the exchange market is still sharp because these people are still eating well. However, I do think there is a certain element of, to market make, you rarely hold very strong opinions. You're constantly moving your prices all the time, looking to sort of make these small margins. And so if you don't have a few people with really aggressively strong opinions, that you do lose something there. If the market can sort of be moved around quite easily by money, it always comes back to a solid average, sometimes an excellent average. But if you don't have the guy who's there going, I'm going to have 100 grand on this horse, I'm going to start overnight, I'm going to put it in fivers, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to bluff this, and I'm going to fake that, push this price out. Then at 10 in the morning, I'm going to start calling commission agents, get some runners out. That person, the person who plots the massive bets, they may have got sick of Betfair, I can imagine. Those people may have just thought, oh, bugger it. Whereas once upon a time when there was the fish money that was like, oh, I fancy laying this horse, I'll just put the money up and go to lunch. If that guy's not, those are the kind of, those people, those were the real bread and butter for the people who are plotting the big stake, because they could just like snap that up and suddenly I've got a good amount of what I want to get on filled, quick and easy. So I think when they're constantly staring at, right, so I've probably got 3 sets of bots here and they're all putting up 5s and 10s. It's going to take me best part of like 4 hours to do this, and it's like, whereas there's still some on course, there's still betting shops, there's still other ways to get around this. So I think some of those may have just given up on it. Okay,
now I want to jump in there. Have they plunged into a dark pool? And tell us what these mysterious dark pools, and you're not the first person, I've heard you talk about them on previous interviews, and other people have mentioned them to me in previous interviews. So are these dark pools a reality in the world of betting these days, and are those big high rollers going in there, and who's laying them?
Well, I think in horse racing, it has predominantly been the commission agents that effectively are the dark pools, in the sense that if you're going to take, I don't know, whether it's 3p in the pound or whatever your commission rate is, and then some commission agents decided, do you know what, I won't charge commission, I'll try and just get on double the amount but eventually what commission agents all will find is that if you have 4 incredibly sharp punters all backing, 4 different horses in a 7-runner race, you start to think, can they all be right? And the truth is they can, if they all take the best price at the best time. They can sort of all get value on their bets, but you start to realize maybe there's something I can do here to keep a little bit back. And I actually think that he does very well in the jumps, and he, to be honest, is more of a flat man, so I can not lay off as much of his. Suddenly you get commission agents effectively it sort of can become a bookmaking enterprise at this point. And so then essentially they are a dark pool in the sense that, you know, at any given time, they don't have their prices published necessarily on a website or anything like that. So you call them up, you ask for a price, see what I can do. They'll call you back a bit later, manage to get you this much at this amount. You know, what they may do is they may take the call, say like, what do you want? And says, oh, can you try and get me £1,000 on at 72? Okay, right. Look there, no one else. And then suddenly the commission agents realise, oh, there's some people who are pricing up the whole race. I'll call him up. Do you any interest in laying ground at 72? So then suddenly you're doing what a lot of people just call cross-matching. So you've got punter A who's sharp, punter B who's sharp, and punter B just needs to get on. And so the reality is that eventually someone gets ground out. And so the commission agent is constantly looking for places where they can get the bets on. And they're also constantly looking to, you know, manage that pool, because in a way you want to be in a situation where you know, you've got some people who are willing to lay bets, some people are very good on different, you know, disciplines, and then, but the funny thing is a lot of commission agents end up with a load of phone calls from people saying, oh, I want to have, you know, these 5 each way bets and this 16-runner handicap, and it's like, with a commission agent, they're kind of like, well, it's a tough game, that really. If I go and have all those bets with any online sources I've got, I'll just get burned. If I go into shops, I've got my runners wasting time trying to get 25 each way on 16-runner handicap. You know, it's like, it can sort of, so in a weird way, the dark pools are basically, certainly for horse racing, the commission agent structure, I'd say. And, you know, that's got to be one of the hardest games in the world, I'd say that is, you know, I remember speaking to a guy, and he was basically chained to the exchanges all day, every day, as well as, you know, several phones on the go at once, all of this stuff, and it's just a recipe for burnout, to be honest. But yeah, that sort of is that kind of dark pool. In terms of like big punters crossing off in other sports, definitely happens. Definitely in the US, commission agent, that sort of Costa Rican offshore environment, it's definitely people who are, you know, happy to leave, or I'm trying to back this team at +7, and that commission agent will sort of fish around, say anyone interested in taking this. But yeah, much like the Betfair sort of gladiatorial arena, is that if there's ever one person who's dominant, well, they burn their outs, and they burn their outs not because they're not willing to take a bet anymore, it's just because they've got no money left. So.
Yeah, the same people end up with it. Now, you've got this vast knowledge and experience in the industry, so do you punt?
Very little now. Pretty much all the betting I do comes in the form of I advise someone, and they sort of might give me a little cut of what they're doing off the back of the advice. Long time I used to price up golf still, even after I stopped doing golf as a trader, when I was in the finance world. I just used to send the numbers, my tissue if you like, and the guy I worked with, he would then bet it and cut me in for a bit. To be honest, for someone, I'm a nervous punter at the best of times. So, and I am, you know, afflicted with the inability to pull the trigger a lot of the time. So in a weird way, the best thing for me is to pass information on to those who are happy to be maniacs. Excellent,
because this is what, in this last part, we want you to pass the information on to punters that are looking to beat the bookmakers. I've heard you say in an interview, probably the same interview that the other things I've talked about, that there was something you was doing in an account, I won't mention the bookmaker, that looked muggy, backing loser after loser, but was sure to win in the long term. Now that sounds like a perfect strategy, especially when it's hard to get on. Does that still work? And can you tell us a little bit about what this strategy was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I can't go into the full. Essentially, it's backing very short prices, and there's always been angles in terms of backing very. I think in horse racing, the old studies used to get white papers like 20 years ago that, you know, backing shorter than 2 on even was almost just profitable SP once upon a time. You know, people don't want to back very, very short prices. It's very hard to take a bet on it as a bookmaker. And as a consequence, you often get this skew whereby, you know, they tend to go, everyone wants to back the dog. People don't, you know, in sort of this kind of situation when there's people like backing favourites, but when the favourite gets too strong, they start to look at the dog. This is sort of the relationship. And so really, really strong favourites in things like, I don't know, the Premier League or whatever, they get that balance right, and Betfair very much clearly shows you the way there. But where it becomes tricky is that, you know, when people started doing all sorts of football, handball, volleyball, God knows what, all sorts of this everywhere. And you got to this point where if you started to really dive into it, you just found pockets where it's like, this team doesn't lose at home. It just doesn't have this crappy league. Whenever anyone goes to this club, you know, they get a hiding. And, you know, you sort of start to look through the mathematics of it and you're like, okay, so everyone who runs this kind of rating model will think that this team's got half a chance. But the reality is that the classical sort of simple ratings models won't factor in the fact that the only reason this can be 10 on is if, you know, there's a fire in the stadium or something like that, and they, like, halfway through they allow the game to stand because the other team's 1-0 up or whatever, you know. And the reality is that that should be 101 or it's done. So there's very short prices. And funny enough, the absolute master of this once upon a time was Harry Findlay. Harry Findlay knew that Steve Davis, over a long format in snooker, wasn't bloody getting beaten for a period of time. It just wasn't happening. And so when bookmakers would chalk up the 10 to 1 or 10 on or whatever, it'd be like, it's 1-0-0-1 this, you know, it just doesn't lose. And Harry absolutely, so he did it in tennis, I think did in a variety of areas, but snooker's the one I classically remember. But he was like, these things are absolutely, you know, as we used to say, buying money. Although I quite prefer the American expression bridge jumper. I think Dr. Zimber described them as bridge. But, you know, these really short-priced horses, things like that. So basically I've worked out, in my mind, what was a decent enough way to find very short odds type propositions that would, you know, have this kind of element in it. And I mean, what it also happened at the similar time is there was a tipping service that came out that actually specialised in the same thing. And I thought to myself, initially I thought, oh gosh, but it didn't seem to be backing much more high profile stuff, which I felt like that wasn't the way to go. But, you know, I was sort of like, so then middle of the day, I'd had, you know, spreadsheets up and everything. Middle of the day, you'd be looking like that and be like, oh, okay, this, you know, Lithuanian basketball or whatever. And I'd sort of plug it in. I'd be like saying, all right, well, I think this is like a 105 shot. Log on. Oh, look, it's 1.21 or something like that. And you'd be like, okay. And having those bets, don't know. It's funny. I heard about someone who bet at Sky Bet when Sky Bet couldn't go below 1.01, bet 1.01s that really were like absolutely certainties. And they looked through his account after God knows how long, and it just turned out this guy had smashed every 101 every single day, all the bloody time, and cleaned up doing it. I mean, you've got to have big stakes, but I think everyone's there. It's very easy as a bookmaker to think, what, really? You're going to have 100 grand to win, like, you know, like a grand? Like, it's just madness. But it's like, value's value, isn't it, at the end of the day? But yeah, so I had this idea, and anyway, as is often the variance of it, you know, you're sort of trialing this out with a few different bookmakers. And then, yeah, this account just got chinned, like 1.1 shot chinned, 1.2 shot chinned, 1.15 shot chinned. I was just like, Jesus Christ. Anyway, yeah, but I just found it funny. They didn't take many of these to get chinned before I got a phone call asking me if I'd like. I think the great thing was the opening gambit was, we'll give you some free spins on the, oh good, thanks. But it's funny because I felt a bit insulted. But the funny thing is, even I'm so low on confidence at times, I was thinking, God, maybe this is the worst idea I've ever had. But, you know, the funny thing is, for a while I was doing it. It took quite a lot of time to do. You know, I hadn't figured out a way to automate it or anything like that. And to be honest, I get very bored very easily. And to be honest, backing very short prices is very boring. So,
one last question. There's a yes or no answer, really. Is there a point, due to more and more sophisticated modelling and algorithms used by bookmakers, that they'll be able to squeeze any edge there is out of a straight playing punter, or has a punter always got a chance of finding that?
Punter will always have a chance, always, by virtue of the fact that adverse selection means that they get to choose when they bet, bookmakers don't. You know, it's impossible for anyone to put up, algorithmically or otherwise, impossible to be 100% perfect all the time. Just simply not possible. So I think the punter will always have a chance.
Tremendous. Well, thanks very much, Matthew Trenhaile. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.